Hi guys, if you've never seen my face before, my name is Brielle. Welcome to my channel. So I'm doing something a little bit different today. I'm a big self-development girl. I've gotten very into mindfulness and self-improvement. So this phenomenon is just fascinating to me. What we're talking about today is the Great Resignation. If you're not familiar with what the Great Resignation is, it's basically a term that's been assigned to the amount of people that have quit or considered quitting their jobs in 2021 and 2020. Over 4.3 million Americans quit their jobs in August. This was a huge record, and it was the 5th month in a row of record-breaking numbers quitting their jobs. And I think especially in the wake of 2020 and seeing how many people lost their jobs, this new phenomenon of people choosing to leave their jobs, it's just fascinating. And it's a lot of young people who are exiting their current 9-to-5s. And I think it's so revealing about millennials, about Gen Z, and about what is changing with culture, what people want out of life, and what we're sort of realizing about this giant structure that we've been sort of ushered into and taught to just buy into our entire lives. Okay, so first let's talk about why people are quitting. What are the environmental factors that have led to this giant resignation? Obviously, first thing we have to talk about is COVID, because I think COVID was an instigator that sort of brought a lot of feelings that had already been building up for years to the surface and sort of snapped people out of their comfortable day-to-day. When COVID happened, the sort of false sense of security that many people were enjoying was ripped out from under them. No longer could you just sort of sleepwalk through your day-to-day life. You were really forced to confront reality. And I think it was just a huge wake-up call for the people who had just gotten really comfortable in their jobs, who had gotten used to sort of accepting maybe something they weren't thrilled about or mediocrity, and forced them to really think deeper about things. COVID was a reminder that nothing is truly guaranteed, and I think it made a lot of people realize that staying in a job for security was no longer enough, because there really is no such thing as security. Pandemics can happen, natural disasters can happen. I think it really put in people's mind this idea of life is short, life is precious, we don't know what's gonna happen. It gave people this sort of YOLO / fuck it mentality that I think really contributed to a lot of people leaving their jobs, being reminded that this is their one life. With COVID and quarantine, people were ripped out of their routines, and they were forced to spend more time in isolation, more time just with their own thoughts. It made it impossible for people to just distract themselves from the elements of their lives they weren't thrilled about. No longer could you go through your 9-to-5 week and then go absolutely crazy at bars on the weekends to just make yourself feel better about the job that you hate, That just wasn't really an option anymore, because you were stuck at home and you were forced to confront the realities of your life. And I think that just led to more self-awareness and more reflection, and all this extra time that people had during quarantine. People who were now working from home and were spending more time at their houses. It was a time that people could spend learning about different ways to make money, or doing the inner work to decide what they wanted for a career. And all that time for self-reflection, I think, prompted a lot of people to want to leave their jobs and want to see what else is out there. I also think in recent years, with COVID and just in general with these younger generations, we're seeing an increased priority on mental health, seeing a spike in mental disorders and mental health issues in recent years with recent generations. And I don't think it's because younger people are necessarily more frequently having anxiety and depression. I think it's just that we acknowledge it more and we care more about it, and we want to discuss it, and we want to help it. And I think as people have started to care more about mental health, checking in with ourselves, prioritizing self-reflection and self-improvement, people have begun to question the system, the traditional path, and whether or not that's truly making them happy or will truly make them happy. Not to mention, now that people were working from home, they were realizing that there are different ways that work can look. Working from home is an option. Being able to travel and work while you're abroad is a thing that people can do. People began to open their minds to other possibilities and realizing that there are other alternatives to the way that things are as we've accepted it, Another big thing that I think contributed to the Great Resignation happening is the fact that we're living in a social media age that again has taught us that there are other options, We see people being entrepreneurs, working for themselves, being able to travel around the world. We're learning more and more about how much money people in these positions are making, seeing, success stories of people leaving their jobs and creating their own lives and their own careers. And as we're being exposed to this independence, traveling, like all these different lifestyles, you know, people living in vans, converting like school buses into houses. We're seeing more people that are interested in starting side hustles and working on YouTube and being entrepreneurs because we're realizing how possible it is. It's so different compared to decades and decades ago when your only peers were the people directly around you, you know? Everyone you knew probably had like an office type job or a standard career. Now we're exposed to such a wider range of people because of social media, and that can be really inspiring for a lot of us. I also think with social media and like increased conversation about all of this, like people discussing the system together, we're realizing that this dissatisfaction with the 9 to 5, with the common trajectory, is a common feeling. It's not us, it's the system, the trajectory of the American dream that is so often unfulfilling. I do just want to make a disclaimer at this point in the video that I'm not trying to villainize 9 to 5s or regular jobs by any means. And I think if you're happy in your job, by all means, stay there. I just think that this is an interesting phenomenon. Okay, so let's talk about the American dream and the problem with the American dream, why I think it's problematic. So there's a very conventional path to success that we are sort of taught to follow from a very young age. You know, we're taught to get good grades, to try our best, and if we do that, if we get the good GPA, if we get the degree, you'll be happy, you know, you'll be valued, you'll be important, you'll make money. But what a lot of people are finding as they're going upon this American dream path, the path we're sort of taught to follow, even if you do everything you're told to do, it's not enough. Companies not only expect you to have gotten the good grades, but also to have years of experience. There's no sense of nurturing in a lot of companies as there once was. You know, the days of being scooped out of college and taught the ropes and ushered along and helped into the industry, you know, that's just something that in recent years we aren't seeing as much. Companies sort of expect you to know it all right through the gate. And even when you do somehow manage to get your foot in the door and get into one of these like stable jobs, what we're really seeing is a disconnect between what a company expects from their employees and the compensation they're willing to give. Workers are undervalued and underpaid, but overworked. You're expected to deal with high stress and managing multiple projects at once and bad treatment from your superiors and all of these different factors that are detrimental to people's mental health while you're being paid barely above a comfortable living wage. The amount of emotional abuse that people go through, suffer through, trying to work their ways up these companies is really disheartening. And I'm not saying that that's a universal experience, but it's more common than it should be, that people just sort of get kicked into the ground. Companies expect you to give your all. When I was applying to jobs, I remember seeing in so many company descriptions for like job listings, like, oh, you have to be able to manage multiple projects at once and deal with high stress situations and return things as soon as they're assigned to you. It's just this high list of expectations, and then in return, you're being paid next to entry level pay. I don't think it's shocking that a lot of people feel undervalued or unfulfilled by jobs that continue to not treat them properly and expect them to just take it rolling over. It comes down to companies and higher ups, you know, the people who are in power, the people who are successful, basically teaching lower workers that they should just take what they can get and not complain. Just this perpetuation of this idea in so many different industries that you have to deal with the cards that you're dealt. You have to suffer for years and decades in order to get to that point of success. You have to be somebody's coffee bitch for 10 years before you can get anywhere meaningful. And you are sort of expected to just deal with the emotional abuse. It's seen as part of the territory and something you have to go through to get to the top. And I think younger generations, as we're starting to care more about our mental well-being and, you know, mindfulness and being present and all of these things that millennials and Gen Z care about, we're realizing that that's not worth it. We don't want to deal with 15 years of abuse to climb our way up the ladder. And now that we're realizing there's other options, just not worth it for so many people. And I think that's why people are quitting these jobs. We're all becoming disillusioned with this false narrative that we need to be disrespected and undervalued. We're realizing that school to college to a steady job isn't the only or necessarily an effective path to success. We've heard adults, we've heard our parents who took this path, who worked their way up. We've heard how miserable so many of them are, how they feel like they've wasted their life. And that's a big fear for a lot of people that I think are in these younger generations, is we don't want to waste our lives just climbing up some endless rat race. We've heard how unfulfilling that is. Something that frustrates the heck out of me about the narrative that's being spun around the Great Resignation is that older generations, you know, the baby boomers, whoever the heck, older generations are trying to spin it as us just being lazy, you know? Gen Z and millennials, they don't want to work. They want everything to be handed to them. They don't want to have to try. And it's so frustrating because that is so the opposite of what I think is truly happening. A lot of the people that are expressing this dissatisfaction with the system are the same people who have tried so hard to do the right thing their whole lives. It is the overachievers, the gifted students that are getting super frustrated because they took the right path and they have continued to be unhappy. You know, they were miserable throughout school. They were trying so hard, only to find out when they got out of college that no companies cared about their GPA, you know, or they couldn't get a job. And when they did get a job, you know, these companies barely valued them. They didn't pay them well enough. Their mental health never improved from those days that they were slaving away in school. And again, I think people are just wanting more out of life now. They're seeing the unhappiness that is so prevalent amongst our parents' generation. The sense of just getting through the week, getting through the day, struggling to enjoy life and waiting for the weekend. I don't want to live like that. I think people are just starting to realize that there must be more. And these huge catastrophic existential events like COVID are that wake-up call to remind us that like crazy things are happening. You know, our system is being disrupted, and it's taking these giant events to do it, but it shows us that things can be different. People are also just starting to question everything more, not just blindly accepting things for how it is, but wondering why it's like that. Does it need to be like that? What type of environment do I work best in? You know, what do I want my day-to-day life to look like? Maybe that's not a very traditional schedule at a very traditional job. And I think people are realizing for the first time that we're allowed to ask ourselves those questions. We've also seen in recent years amongst younger generations this push for realness. I've even seen it on YouTube. Like, so many people have gravitated away from the like overproduced, like fake personas to present like a more authentic version of themselves. Corporations and companies need to catch up with that desire for authenticity. At the end of the day, we're all just tired. I feel like we're tired of putting on this fake professionalism that feels like a necessary evil. Like the fact that we're taught if we say the wrong words in an email or a resume, that we could immediately be disregarded by an entire company. The fact that we're taught we have to dress perfectly. This rigid conception of what work has to be when so much of the rest of the world is changing. At the end of the day, we're all real people, you know? We all have these different sides, and having to completely hide that in work when work is how we're spending so much of our time is just, it's just crazy to me. We don't want to be fake professional anymore, you know? We don't want to fake everything about our personality and our appearance just to be accepted in a workplace. And I think that's why people are looking for jobs that are more casual, more accepting, and companies need to catch up to that. Because I really think that the best work gets done when people feel like they can be themselves and they can be comfortable and authentic. So what do I think that the Great Resignation means for the future? Because I do think that this is going to change a lot of things about how people approach work, how people approach life in general, and hopefully it'll be a good wake-up calls for companies and corporations, because there's nothing more annoying than seeing companies complain about labor shortages and no one wants to work, etc., etc. If you are frustrated by the lack of labor or people's lack of dedication to work, it's your responsibility to take the millions and millions of dollars that you have that you're, you know, filing to your higher ups and make these entry level or medium level jobs more enticing, make workers feel valued and important. And I think that that falls on the companies. It doesn't fall on the workers. So I'm hoping that the Great Resignation will be a wake-up call for companies who haven't adapted to this new age, to this new generation of workers. Younger generations are not lazy or entitled or asking too much. We just want to be treated with respect. We want to feel like our time is valued and like we're being fairly compensated for the skills and the effort we're bringing to the table. Or we're just going to keep looking for alternative ways to make money or side hustles because we don't want to be stuck in a miserable situation. And I hope that people continue to reflect more and to think more about what they want out of life and out of their careers. Only good things can come from us questioning everything, honestly. I love talking about these things. I would love to make more videos talking about like the system in the future. So if that's something you're interested in, definitely let me know. But I just had to talk about this because I've been addicted to watching videos about this topic, and God, I just think it's fascinating. And I think whether you're in school or you're working already, like, this is something that you should be thinking about. If you like this video, definitely make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.